The Aegis, Earth's most advanced starship, cut through the blackness of space like a jagged knife. Its hull gleamed under the cold light of distant stars, a silent sentinel. Inside, the hum of the ship's engines was a constant reminder of the vastness ahead, a galaxy teeming with unknown dangers and untold opportunities. At the helm, Captain Aidan Stroud stood, eyes fixed on the swirling nebula and planets below. A seasoned leader, he had seen countless battles, yet the weight of what was coming pressed harder on his shoulders than any skirmish he fought before. The room around him buzzed with tension. The Intergalactic Council had sent them on this mission with little more than whispers in the shadows. They were to negotiate with the Sargoth Collective, an empire whose reputation for ruthlessness had long preceded them. To the galaxy, humanity was still a curiosity, wild, unpredictable, and unpolished. But Captain Stroud knew better. Earth was far more dangerous than anyone realized. The universe had underestimated them for centuries, and it was time to make that clear. As the starfield shifted outside, Stroud's first officer, Lieutenant Aria Mendoza, approached with a datapad in hand. Her face, always composed, betrayed a flicker of concern. "Captain, there's a transmission coming in from the Sargoth. They've initiated a fleet-wide lockdown. They're not letting us in until further notice." Aiden's lips twisted into a smirk. "They'll regret that." "I've been reading about the Sargoth," Mendoza continued, her voice low but steady. "They're calculating cold. I know we're good, but I'm not sure we're good enough for this. We might be walking into a trap." Stroud met her gaze, his expression hardening. "We are Earth's best hope, Lieutenant. The Sargoth won't understand us until it's too late." He turned away, pacing toward the main view screen. "We don't raise prey, Mendoza. We breed predators." Outside the window, the Aegis drifted closer to the Sargoth border. The red lights of the alien ships, sharp and menacing, appeared as glowing tendrils reaching out into the void. The Sargoth fleet was already in position, their ships like dark, aggressive shadows hanging in the distance. Tension coiled tighter, but Aiden was calm, each movement deliberate as he prepared for what was coming. A soft beep from the communications console signaled the arrival of a new message. Stroud stepped forward, hitting the button to receive the transmission. The screen flickered to life, revealing a figure cloaked in black, their alien features obscured in shadow. A Sargoth emissary, no doubt. Their voice was cool, measured, almost bored. "Human Captain, you are trespassing in Sargoth territory. You will turn back, or we will eliminate your vessel." Stroud's eyes narrowed. "I don't take orders from aliens. You'll soon learn that we don't scare easily." A slight pause followed. Then a ripple of static filled the silence before the message cut off. The air in the command center crackled with the unspoken tension. "They want to fight. We'll give them one," Aiden muttered. His crew stood by, ready to follow their captain into the unknown. The stakes were clear now. Earth's rise had begun, and the Sargoth would learn the hard way that humanity wasn't just another player in the galaxy. It was the predator everyone feared to awaken. The Aegis lurched forward, piercing the dark abyss of space as the human fleet moved in. What started as a diplomatic mission was about to turn into something far deadlier, and Captain Aidan Stroud was ready to lead them into the heart of the storm. The silence of space was shattered by the growl of engines, and the Aegis rocketed forward, cutting through the stars like a knife through flesh. Captain Aidan Stroud stood at the bridge, his fists clenched on the console. His crew moved with focused intensity, each member fully aware of what was at stake. The Sargoth Collective had made their first move, and now humanity would make theirs. "Red alert." Aiden's voice was steady but carried an edge of command that no one could ignore. "All hands, prepare for battle." The bridge lit up in a haze of flashing lights and blinking controls as the crew rushed to their stations. Lieutenant Mendoza was quick to adjust the fleet's coordinates, eyes scanning the star charts for any signs of the Sargoth's next move. The Sargoth ships, black and angular like a predator lying in wait, loomed just beyond the planet's orbit, their presence menacing and silent. "They're not responding to our signals, Captain," Mendoza reported, her voice tight. "Figures," Stroud muttered under his breath. "They're not interested in talking. Get the fleet into formation." Outside, the enemy fleet was closing in. The Sargoth ships, massive and imposing, were lined up like a wall of metal death. Each one was a beast of war, their weapons primed and ready to destroy anything that crossed their path. Aiden's heart raced, but his face remained cold, calculating. He had been in plenty of battles before, but this was different. This was humanity's first real chance to show what they were capable of. Firing sequences confirmed. Mendoza called out, her eyes fixed on the glowing screens. Ready when you are. Aiden gave a sharp nod. Do it. In an instant, the Aegis erupted into action. The sleek ship leaped forward, charging at the enemy, its guns firing in rapid succession. Blasts of energy streaked across the dark void, lighting up the cold emptiness with fiery explosions. The Sargoth ships responded in kind, their own weapons flaring with deadly force. The Aegis danced between the blasts, dodging and weaving with the precision only a human pilot could execute. The sound of the battle was deafening inside the ship, a constant roar of energy discharges and clashing forces. Stroud's grip tightened on the console as the battle unfolded around him. His mind worked on overdrive, calculating every move, every twist in the fight. His crew was skilled, but they hadn't faced anything like this. The Sargoth were ruthless, their weapons devastating, but Earth was different. The humans aboard the Aegis weren't afraid of dying, they were afraid of losing. Direct hit to the port side. Mendoza shouted, the ship shuddering under the blast. Shields holding, but we need to take them out fast. Focus fire on the lead Sargoth ship, Stroud barked, his eyes narrowing. Take down their command vessel, and the rest will crumble. The Aegis locked its sights on the massive Sargoth flagship, its sleek surface rippling with the intensity of the battle. The cannons fired, each blast a thunderous roar as the energy beams tore into the flagship's hull. Sparks flew, and a massive explosion rippled through the Sargoth ship. For a moment, everything seemed to slow, the deafening sounds of combat quieting as if the universe itself held its breath. The flagship didn't explode. Instead, it faltered, then held steady, firing back with renewed fury. Damn it! Stroud cursed, watching as the Sargoth flagship retaliated, its weapons now aimed squarely at the Aegis. Brace for impact. The ship bucked violently as the blast hit. The crew staggered, but they held their ground. Status, Stroud demanded. We're still in the fight, Mendoza said, her voice tight. Shields are down to 60%, but we've damaged their central weapons array. They're not going to last much longer. Then let's finish this. Aiden growled, his eyes alight with the thrill of battle. Humanity doesn't run. We hunt. With a final, coordinated strike, the Aegis and the rest of Earth's fleet unloaded everything they had left. The Sargoth flagship exploded in a fiery blossom of light, its shattered remains scattering through space. The remaining Sargoth ships hesitated, then fell into chaos, retreating in the face of Earth's overwhelming counterattack. The battle was over, but the war had just begun. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy would remember what it meant to face humanity in its purest form, ruthless, unpredictable, and relentless. Stroud allowed himself a single grim smile. First blood, Lieutenant, he said, his voice calm. Let's make sure they never forget who we're dealing with. The Aegis drifted in the cold void of space, its engines humming softly as it hung just outside the darkened orbit of a barren world. Captain Aiden Stroud stood at the helm, his gaze fixed on the screen ahead, where the coordinates for the Sargoth research facility blinked ominously. The victory over the Sargoth flagship had sent shockwaves through the galaxy, but the battle was far from won. Intelligence reports had surfaced, whispering of a weapon far deadlier than anything humanity had yet encountered, something the Sargoth had been building in secret. We can't wait any longer, Aiden muttered to himself. If this thing's real, it's the end of everything. Lieutenant Mendoza approached, her brow furrowed. Captain, the recon drums just finished their sweep. The facility is on the surface, very deep beneath a mountain range. It's a fortress, heavily shielded. We won't be able to simply drop in. Aiden exhaled slowly, turning to face her. I didn't expect easy. We'll hit them hard, fast, and clean. Get the crew ready. We move in 30. The command center buzzed with activity. The crew had seen battles, but nothing like this. A weapon capable of wiping out entire planets. It was the kind of thing that would tip the balance of power in the galaxy forever. If the Sargoth finished it, no one, no species, would be safe. As the Aegis entered the atmosphere of the barren planet, the ship shook violently, warning lights flashing across the bridge. Mendoza's voice cut through the chaos. We're going to have to fight our way in, Captain. Their air defense system's already locking onto us. Then let's give them a fight, Stroud said, his grin widening. Prepare to launch all boarding craft. We're going in hot. The ship's engines roared as it plunged through the planet's thick atmosphere, the hull groaning under the pressure. Outside, a battalion of human assault craft, sleek and armed to the teeth, detached from the Aegis and rocketed toward the surface. Inside the hull, the crew braced for impact, the adrenaline already surging through their veins. As the assault craft descended, massive Sargoth anti-air guns opened fire, sending streaks of bright energy toward the incoming ships. One by one, the Sargoth lasers sliced through the sky, narrowly missing the human crafts. But the human pilots were quick, nimble. They twisted and turned, avoiding most of the fire as they closed in on their target. "We're in," Mendoza shouted over the comms. "The facility's in sight." The landing zone was an imposing sight, an ancient, weathered structure half buried in the mountain's shadow, with defenses that would have deterred any other species. But humanity didn't back down from a challenge. The assault craft touched down with a violent jolt, and Aiden's team poured out, weapons drawn, ready for whatever awaited them inside. The Sargoth didn't wait for them to make the first move. The doors of the facility opened, and a swarm of armored Sargoth soldiers surged forward. They were fast, brutal, and their technology was unmatched. But humanity had one thing the Sargoth didn't: heart. Aiden led the charge, his pulse pounding in his ears as he cut down the first Sargoth soldier with a swift blast from his rifle. His team followed, their movements sharp and precise. Explosions ripped through the air as grenades went off, sending dust and debris flying. The Sargoth soldiers fought back fiercely, but each shot fired by the humans found its mark. Through the chaos, Aiden's eyes never left the prize, an enormous, heavily protected vault deep within the facility. The weapon. It had to be there. "Clear the path," Stroud ordered, his voice a steady command above the noise of battle. "Move." They fought their way through the facility's corridors, the Sargoth's resistance growing fiercer with each step. But the humans were relentless, pushing forward until they reached the vault's entrance, a massive door covered in strange symbols. Mendoza approached, her hands flying over the panel to unlock the vault. "This is it, Captain. It's ready to breach." Aiden didn't flinch. He knew what was waiting behind that door. He also knew they couldn't let the galaxy find out. Humanity would fight to the last man to stop the Sargoth's weapon from ever seeing the light of day. The door hissed open, and inside, a sleek, glowing device stood on a pedestal, its form incomprehensible, its power almost tangible in the air. The Sargoth had been building it for years, and now it was within their reach. Aiden felt the weight of the moment. He didn't hesitate. The Aegis would be the final line of defense, and humanity would be the one to pull the trigger first. The vault door groaned open, revealing the heart of the Sargoth weapon. Inside, it was nothing like they had expected. The device wasn't a simple weapon of mass destruction. It was something far worse. Twisted metal and strange alien alloys encased a pulsing core of liquid energy, swirling with colors that didn't belong to any natural spectrum. It hummed with an eerie low frequency, almost as if it were alive. Leighton Strode stood at the threshold, his breath caught in his chest. The sheer power radiating from the device was overwhelming, and the realization hit him like a slap. This wasn't just a weapon. It was a tool to control entire civilizations. The Sargoth had been using it to manipulate the minds of other species, bending them to their will. No one was safe from its reach. Mendoza stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly as she examined the device. "Captain, this isn't just about destruction. They've been using this to control minds, twist them into puppets. If we don't destroy it now, we're all at risk." Stroud's gaze flickered across the device, his eyes narrowing with determination. "It has to go. We can't let this fall into the wrong hands." As Mendoza approached the device's control panel, the sharp sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway outside. Stroud's hand snapped to his weapon. His heart rate spiked. The Sargoth weren't far behind. They had to know what was happening inside. He motioned for his team to fall back into defensive positions. The blast doors slammed shut with a heavy thud, sealing the room. A red warning light flashed, signaling the imminent arrival of Sargoth forces. Aiden cursed under his breath. They didn't have much time. He motioned to Mendoza. "Can you shut it down?" Mendoza's face was set with grim determination. "I can try, but the Sargoth have advanced tech. I'll need time to bypass the security protocols." Aiden didn't need to hear more. "Do it. We'll hold them off." The team moved into position, taking cover behind large crates and consoles as they braced for the inevitable assault. The air was thick with tension, the soft hum of the weapon now almost deafening in its presence. Moments later, the door exploded inward with a deafening roar. Sargoth soldiers poured into the room, their eyes glinting with malice behind their alien helmets. They moved quickly, weapon systems powered up and ready. But the humans were ready too. Aiden's rifle roared to life as he fired the first shot, dropping the first soldier in a flash of brilliant light. His crew followed, each blast landing true as they engaged the oncoming enemy. The Sargoth were strong, but they were outnumbered. The humans moved with a precision that only years of preparation could create. Every movement was calculated, every shot an extension of their will to survive. Through the chaos, Mendoza continued to work, her fingers flying across the panel's interface as she bypassed security protocols. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but her focus never wavered. "I'm almost there, Captain. Just a little longer." Strode fired again, taking down another Sargoth soldier, his mind already calculating the next move. The Sargoth were relentless, but there was one thing they hadn't counted on: the human spirit. Aiden felt it in the blood pumping through his veins, the fire in his chest that would never go out, no matter how many times the enemy came at them. The Sargoth charged again, but this time they hesitated. They could see the determination in the humans' eyes, feel the raw energy surging through the room. It was something the Sargoth had never experienced before, a species fighting with everything it had, refusing to bow to their might. Mendoza's voice rang out above the chaos, sharp with triumph. "It's done. The weapon's disabled." Aiden's heart skipped a beat. "Good work, Lieutenant. Now let's get out of here before they bring reinforcements." But as the team turned to move, a low, ominous rumble echoed from beneath the floor. Aiden froze, his eyes scanning the room. The device wasn't fully shut down. Something was still active, something far worse than they had anticipated. The ground shook again, harder this time, as the walls around them began to twist and warp. The Sargoth had a hidden failsafe, and it was coming to life. The weapon was awakening, but now it was not just a tool of mind control. It was something else entirely, something far darker. "Move!" Stroud yelled, his voice cutting through the panic. "We're getting out of here, now." With the Sargoth soldiers closing in and the facility beginning to implode around them, the humans ran, leaving the device behind. But they knew it wouldn't be the last time they faced this threat. The Sargoth might have lost today, but the true war had only just begun, and humanity would be ready. The tunnel trembled beneath their boots. Sparks flew from broken conduits in the walls as Captain Aiden Stroud and his team sprinted down the narrow corridor, the air thick with smoke and heat. Behind them, the Sargoth facility groaned like a dying beast. Alarms blared in alien tones, echoing like a scream through metal halls. "Keep moving," Aiden shouted, coughing through the haze. "This whole place is coming down." Mendoza clutched a small black box to her chest, the weapon's core interface. Not the full device, but enough data to analyze, maybe even understand, enough to give humanity a chance. "I've got the control shard," she yelled over her shoulder. "If we can get this to the fleet, we can learn how they built it." Strode didn't slow. He glanced over his shoulder, walls cracking, lights bursting. A deep, unearthly hum vibrated through the metal beneath them. Whatever fail-safe the Sargoth had activated, it wasn't just a self-destruct. It was alive. They turned a corner and stopped dead. A figure blocked the exit. It stood tall, armor glinting with red energy, eyes glowing like twin stars. It was no ordinary Sargoth soldier. This was something new, something worse. It didn't speak. It just stepped forward, silent and sure, as if it knew it couldn't be stopped. Back. Stroud raised his rifle and fired. The bolt hit dead center. Nothing. The creature kept walking. "Hit it with everything," he ordered. The team unloaded a storm of fire. Explosive rounds, plasma bursts, grenades. The air turned white with energy discharge. But when the smoke cleared, the creature was still standing, armor scared, but barely dented. Then it moved. It struck with inhuman speed. One soldier went flying, armor crumpled. Another was slammed against the wall with bone-breaking force. Stroud dove, grabbing Mendoza and pulling her into a side passage as the creature tore through the team like a blade through cloth. "We can't fight it here," he growled. "We have to outsmart it." They ducked behind a collapsed support beam, catching their breath. Mendoza's hands trembled around the shard. "That thing. It's a prototype, an automated enforcer, part biological, part machine. I saw the schematics in the vault. It's designed to protect the weapon even after destruction. Aiden's mind raced. So we disable its orders, or confuse it. There's one way, Mendoza said, eyes widening. If I plug the shard into a comm array, I can overload its signal input, turn its sensors against it. Stroud nodded. Do it. I'll distract it. Before she could argue, he was already moving. He burst from cover, rifle blazing, shouting, "Hey, Tin Can, over here." The creature turned and roared, a horrible vibrating sound that shook the air. It charged, and Aiden ran, heart hammering, drawing it deeper into the crumbling hall. Behind them, Mendoza slid the shard into a damaged panel, fingers flying over alien commands. "Come on," she whispered. "Come on." The creature raised its arm to strike, and froze mid-step. Sparks exploded from its head. Its glowing eyes blinked, twitched. Then, silence. The creature collapsed with a metallic grunt, twitching as its systems shorted out. Stroud returned, panting, covered in grime. Mendoza stood beside the sparking panel, eyes wide in shock and relief. "You did it," he said. "No," she replied. "We just slowed it down." Outside, the mountain shook. And far above, in orbit, something massive stirred. The tremors beneath their feet grew stronger, like the heartbeat of a dying giant. Leighton Strode didn't need to look behind him to know that the Sargoth facility was collapsing. The entire structure seemed to groan, its metal bones rattling as if protesting the weight of its own destruction. They had done what they came for, destroyed the weapon, neutralized the threat, but the planet itself was refusing to let them leave unscathed. "Faster," Stroud urged, his voice steady but strained. "We've got to get to the extraction point before this whole place drops on top of us." Lieutenant Mendoza, clutching the interface shard, nodded grimly as she quickened her pace. "The nearest landing pad's on the opposite side of the complex. We'll have to go through the lower levels to get there." Strode glanced at his team. There were fewer of them now. A few had fallen in the chaos of the battle. The Sargoth hadn't just been warriors. They were engineers, scientists, and strategists, dangerous in ways humanity hadn't fully prepared for. The prototype enforcer they'd faced earlier was only one example of the Sargoth's terrifying technological advancement. But no matter the cost, humanity had struck back. They had crippled the Sargoth's weapon, stolen their advantage. That meant something critical for the war that was about to unfold across the stars. As they descended into the lower levels of the facility, the walls seemed to close in, and the air grew thicker with dust and debris. Emergency lights flickered above them, casting an eerie red glow across the abandoned hallways. The ground beneath them shook with increasing intensity, threatening to tear apart everything in its path. The crew moved in tight formation, weapons drawn, their every step heavy with urgency. Stroud's mind raced ahead, calculating their next moves. Escape was the goal, but it wasn't enough just to survive. He needed to make sure the Sargoth didn't follow them out. If they had any chance of keeping their advantage, they had to make the escape as brutal and final as possible. They reached a wide chamber, its massive doors leading out to the landing pads beyond. The sound of something screeching against metal filled the air as they approached. A few of the crew members paused, their breath catching. "Captain," Mendoza's voice was low, tense. "Something's wrong. This area shouldn't be open yet." Aiden didn't need to ask what she meant. In the center of the chamber stood a massive structure, an enormous Sargoth warship, its engines firing out. The escape was no longer just a race against time. It had become a race against the Sargoth's final response. Before anyone could react, the warship's engines flared to life, sending a shockwave that threw everyone off balance. A massive thrumming sound filled the air, and the ship rose, its dark silhouette blocking out the emergency lights. "Get to the pads, now," Stroud roared. The crew sprinted, the warship looming like a predator, ready to hunt. As they made their way to the extraction craft, the ground buckled beneath them, and the warship's weapons opened fire, targeting the building's foundations. Aiden's heart pounded as they reached the shuttle. The doors slid open with a hiss, and the crew scrambled inside, weapons raised, adrenaline surging through them. Mendoza slammed the controls down. "Ready to launch, Captain." But Stroud didn't sit. He turned, eyes narrowing, and saw the Sargoth ship firing again, directly at them. "Hold on," he shouted as the shuttle lurched into the air just as the Sargoth weapon's blast hit the ground beneath them. The shuttle shot upward, the force of the blast rattling its hull. Through the viewport, Aiden watched the facility collapse behind them, a fiery explosion ripping apart the heart of the Sargoth's last hope. But the warship was still intact, still pursuing them. Aiden's lips curled into a grim smile. They thought they had us. But as the shuttle raced toward space, the shadow of the Sargoth ship still hung in the distance, a reminder that humanity's fight for survival was far from over. The Aegis hummed beneath Aiden Stroud's feet as the shuttle docked, its engines cooling with a low thrum. The docking bay's massive doors slowly closed behind them, sealing off the cold expanse of space. Stroud's breath came in shallow, controlled gasps, the adrenaline of the escape still pulsing through his veins. They had made it, barely. But the fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. The crew of the Aegis was already moving. Mendoza stood by the command console, her fingers flying over the controls, analyzing the data from the shard. The information they'd recovered was vital. Fragments of the Sargoth's plans, weapons schematics, everything they needed to understand how their enemy had developed such devastating power. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. "We need to get this to the fleet," Mendoza said, her voice tense but determined. "They'll need to decrypt it immediately." Aiden nodded. "Prepare the relay. We're going to need the whole galaxy watching this." His eyes drifted to the viewport, where the stars shimmered like distant memories. The Sargoth warship hadn't followed them into the system, not yet. But Aiden knew they wouldn't be safe for long. The enemy would be coming. He could feel it in his bones. The Sargoth weren't a species to retreat easily. "We'll need a plan for when they do," Lieutenant Davis said, stepping up beside him. His voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. "The fleet's too far out to respond in time. If we're going to survive this, we need to hit them first." Stroud's gaze flicked over to the tactical display. The warship was still in the system, just out of reach, but its sensors would have detected their escape. The Sargoth would have already started plotting their next move. Aiden's lips tightened as he mentally prepared for what was to come. "We'll send a message," Aiden said, his voice low but steady. "We're not running. We'll give the Sargoth one shot to surrender. But we're not leaving this system until they understand what we've done." Mendoza was already at work, sending a broad-spectrum transmission to the warship. The message was clear. Humanity had taken the first shot. The Sargoth had lost their weapon. Their advantage had slipped through their fingers, and the galaxy would never be the same. As the transmission went live, Stroud felt a chill run through him. The Sargoth might be ruthless, but they were also cunning. They would know this wasn't a simple skirmish. They would know the stakes had changed. The response came sooner than expected. A single powerful burst of energy lanced through space, a warning shot from the Sargoth warship. It was precise, cold, and lethal, a message of retaliation. The Aegis shuddered from the impact, the hull vibrating under the force. "Shields at 50%, Mendoza reported, her voice unwavering. "They're targeting our engines." Aiden's fingers clenched into fists. Countermeasure. "Now." "We're too close," Lieutenant Davis warned. "If we don't act fast, we won't have time to escape." Stroud turned to face his crew, his voice rising with the urgency of the moment. "We're not running. We're going to take the fight to them." The Aegis shuddered again as the Sargoth fired once more, a line of deadly energy streaking across space. This time, Stroud didn't hesitate. He slammed a button on the console, activating the ship's weapon systems. The deck jolted as the Aegis launched forward, a flurry of missiles and blinding energy from the ship's guns slicing through space. The warship returned fire, but this time the humans were faster. They were ready. The Aegis darted like a needle, weaving between the Sargoth's blasts, hitting its targets with precision. As Stroud gritted his teeth, he saw it. A vulnerable point in the enemy's shield. A single weakness, exposed for just a moment. It was their opening. "Now," Stroud barked, "take the shot." The Aegis fired everything it had. The space between them exploded in a burst of brilliant light, and the Sargoth warship erupted in a massive explosion. But Aiden knew better than to celebrate. The enemy wasn't finished. Not yet. The Aegis shuddered as the blast wave from the Sargoth warship's explosion rippled through space. Stroud gripped the control panel, his knuckles white, eyes fixed on the swirling mass of debris outside the viewport. The ship was still intact. Barely, but the victory felt hollow. The warship had taken a massive hit, but it wasn't gone. Not yet. "Damage report," Stroud barked, his voice sharp. "We're intact, Captain," Mendoza replied, her eyes flicking to the glowing status screens. "Hull integrity at 70%. Engines are functional but compromised. We can't take another direct hit." How long until we're in the clear? Stroud asked, his gaze still locked on the floating wreckage of the enemy ship. He knew it wasn't over. Not until the last of the Sargoth forces were wiped out or fled. Not long, Mendoza said, her voice tight. But there's something strange. I'm picking up another ship, Captain. Coming in fast. It's massive. Aiden's blood ran cold. He didn't need to ask who it was. The Sargoth weren't going to let this attack go unanswered. Their retaliation would come with force, and they wouldn't stop until humanity had been crushed. Reinforcements, Davis muttered under his breath, his eyes narrowing as he looked at the tactical screen. Looks like they're not giving up on this system. Stroud's mind raced. The fleet was still too far away. If they couldn't disable this new threat, they were dead in the water. The Aegis wouldn't survive another battle with a full Sargoth armada. But Stroud wasn't one to back down. Not after everything they had already sacrificed. Prepare for evasive maneuvers, he ordered, locking eyes with his crew. We need to buy time until we can get reinforcements. As the crew scrambled to follow orders, Stroud turned back to the viewport. The massive Sargoth ship was closer now, its dark silhouette cutting through the stars like a shadow of death. It was more than just a warship. It was a mobile fortress, bristling with weapons, its engines glowing with ominous power. Stroud could see the weapons systems charging up, ready to fire. Brace for impact, Mendoza shouted, slamming her hands on the console as the Sargoth ship fired. The first shot struck the Aegis with the force of a thunderstorm. The ship lurched violently, alarms blaring as systems flickered. Stroud gritted his teeth, steadying himself against the console. We're losing power, Davis shouted, looking over his shoulder at the damage indicators. Shields are down to 20%. Aiden didn't hesitate. He activated the ship's thrusters, spinning the Aegis hard to the right to avoid the next shot. The Aegis darted like a ghost, narrowly avoiding the deadly pulse of energy that followed them. The Sargoth ship fired again, its shots relentless, each one leaving a trail of fire in their wake. Stroud's eyes flicked to Mendoza. Get that relay working, now. Mendoza's fingers flew over the console, her face drawn with exhaustion but determination. I'm trying, just hold on. The ship rocked again as another blast scraped across the Aegis hull. Stroud felt the ship's controls slip beneath his hands as the system struggled to stay online. Captain, Mendoza shouted, we've got a narrow window. I need 5 minutes to get the relay up and running. If I can send this data to the fleet, we can coordinate a full counterattack. Aiden's heart pounded in his chest. Do it, he said, his voice a razor's edge. We hold them off for 5 minutes, no matter what. The Aegis shuddered again as the Sargoth fired, but this time the ship held steady. Stroud's hands were steady on the controls as he led the ship into a violent, spiraling maneuver to avoid the next deadly barrage. We're almost there, Mendoza muttered under her breath, her fingers a blur. Outside, the stars seemed to burn brighter as the Sargoth closed in for the kill. Every moment felt like a lifetime, but Stroud could feel it. The fleet was coming. They just had to hold on a little longer. 5 minutes, Stroud murmured to himself. 5 minutes. And with that, the battle raged on. The fate of humanity and the galaxy hung in the balance.